So guys, the time is finally here. After the huge success of the Huawei P9, here comes the P10. It's better in just about every single way, but how does it stack up against the rest of the competition? So it's not very often you see this many innovations packed into one smartphone, and we'll cover them all when we get to it. But to start with, the finish. It's a really well built smartphone, absolutely zero creaking, I suppose as you would expect given its price. Now what we have here is a hyper diamond cut finish, a oddly reflective surface which feels genuinely comfortable, grippy to hold, but is also made of metal so it doesn't lose that high quality feel. It's also pretty unique. Just moving the phone from side to side, it looks different in just about every single lighting condition. It's also at 6.98mm one of the thinnest flagship smartphones out there. It's got no camera bump, which is really refreshing, and it's also got some nice smoothed edges, so unlike phones like the Sony phones for example, it does actually fit quite comfortably in the hand. It cups around your palm. It's also not particularly heavy, so it's usable for long periods of time and sort of upside down while you're in bed, but unfortunately it's still just a bit of a struggle to reach that top corner. The buttons on the side are very tactile, and a nice touch is that the power button is recessed so you can feel around in pretty much all conditions. Right, so let's start by talking about the camera, and this is very interesting. We've got a 12 megapixel RGB sensor and a 20 megapixel monochrome sensor. And having those two bundled into the same smartphone gives you a huge array of possibilities. We've also got a pro mode for people who like to take more manual control over their photos, and generally speaking the photos do come out very well. They're sharp, full of colour, and also the shutter time is very fast, so in good lighting conditions you pretty much avoid all blur. Even in lower light, turning up the ISO enough and the exposure down enough and you can still get clear photos. With optical image stabilization, the 4K video is now extremely steady as well as being sharp and clear. Now another cool option bundled into the P10 is portrait mode. Essentially, it allows you to blur the background far more than you would otherwise be able to, giving the impression that you have a wider aperture than you do. And for the most part, it's pretty effective. Edge detection is good, even better in some cases than what's found on the iPhone 7 Plus. It goes further because with the P10, Huawei has also bundled in something they called artistic mode. It basically ups the contrast, ups the saturation, and sometimes blows out the whites a little bit on your photos, and for the most part it does look very impressive. However, it's not perfect. Every now and again it'll just make photos look really too much, too in your face, and unfortunately this effect really falls apart in lower lighting conditions. It doesn't recognize faces very well at all, and people can start to look a little bit more like tomatoes. Now a really nice touch is the front-facing f1.9 Leica lens. Now this is one of the best front-facing phone cameras out there, period. It can recognize faces at 190 different points and uses that to basically blur your background, more than would otherwise be possible. The video looks good, actually a pretty good vlogging camera, and it's also got some innovative features such as being able to automatically make the shot wider in case you're reaching the edge of it or more people come in. So then we've got the display, and it comes in at 5.1 inches with a resolution of 1080p. It's an IPS LCD panel and unfortunately is far from being the highlight of the phone. Don't get me wrong, the P10 is still great for media consumption. Even though it's only 1080p, at only 5.1 inches we've still got a pixel per inch density of 432. It's also got Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which means that even when you drop it, it pretty much will not break. It's almost twice as strong as Gorilla Glass 4. It's bright enough to be viewed outdoors, but unfortunately it just doesn't have the contrast or the impact that other displays do. People don't look at this and go wow. Also the viewing angles could be better. Tilting it too far to the right or the left and you will start to see your picture fade a little bit. Unfortunately the screen only takes up 71% of the front of the phone, making the phone look a little bit last gen compared to some of the other flagships coming out this year. Internally we've got 4GB of RAM and the Kirin 960, which whilst it is a potent combo is not exactly cutting edge. This is the same combination used in the Huawei Mate 9 last year, so in terms of competing this year it won't be able to match performance of the Snapdragon 835 for example. Having said that, moving through the OS is very snappy. Animations are all fluid and you will definitely struggle to make the phone lag. Gaming too is an awesome experience. Everything runs so smooth that to be honest after a bit of using the phone you'll stop worrying about whether new games will run well on it. It powers through almost every title, 2D, 2.5D, 3D, all with next to no compatibility issues. So the audio front of things is provided by this single speaker on the right hand side of the phone. And whilst the placement is good, unfortunately it doesn't really offer an immersive audio experience. Vocals come out well, it's got a decent amount of bass and pretty loud volume, but it doesn't compete with the likes of HTC Boom Sound. So in terms of software, we're running Android 7.0, definitely a plus, but the skin in which it comes in, namely EMui, may not be to everyone's taste. It's not terrible, and the features it has can genuinely be quite useful, but just its design, to be honest, is a little bit out of date. The built-in icons don't fit particularly well with ones you'll download, and in terms of the material design that Google is heading towards, this almost feels like it's going in the opposite direction. A lot of the built-in apps kind of seem a little bit forced as well. Huawei Share, for example, only works between Huawei smartphones. The built-in store, which comes as well as the Play Store, just offers the same apps, but in a less impressive interface. And a lot of the exercise apps kind of feel a little bit half-baked. They're not quite as good as alternatives you can download for free. Having said that, digging a little bit deeper and you'll start to find a lot of hidden treasures. For example, we've got built-in eye comfort, being able to take out the blue light from your smartphone to make it less strenuous on the eyes, built-in screen recording, which is something you don't tend to see and also works very well, as well as being able to sort of search settings with particular words. You can see your step counter on the lock screen. You can swipe down to search for pretty much anything on the smartphone, messages, contacts, applications, and MUI even has an option to enable a floating navigation bar. Pretty cool. Now, something I think is genuinely very impressive on this phone is the way you navigate through it. Pretty much everything is controlled by this one home button. Gone is the sort of back and the menu buttons previously present on most Android phones, and simply swiping across this opens up multitasking, and tapping on it once will take you back. It's a very innovative way of working, and whilst you can switch to traditional methods, I found myself really liking it. With a 3200 mAh capacity, battery life also came out pretty good. Not only is it very efficient in terms of power management, but we've also got a lot of power saving features here. Being able to activate a power saving mode, an ultra power saving mode, or even to dynamically lower the screen resolution to save power basically means that if you're careful, you can stretch this out to a day and a half of usage. The fingerprint sensor is incredibly fast, has to be up there with one of the fastest I've tried. You can almost blink and you'll be in your smartphone. And the built-in Wi-Fi antennas on this means I was getting signal even when my other smartphones might have lost it. And just to top things off, as well as the 32 gigs of internal storage, which is pretty adequate I guess, we've got 256 in the form of a micro SD card. Not bad. So guys, that's the Huawei P10, and it's an exciting smartphone. It takes a lot of departures in terms of its camera. Both front and rear offer really impressive, immersive and different experiences. Whilst it may not be breaking new ground in terms of performance, it definitely fights its corner. And the software, whilst not exactly the most pleasant visually, hides a lot of interesting, unique and beneficial features. With also a good battery life and a design verging on amazing, I'd have to say the P10 definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Thanks a lot for watching, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to smash that subscribe button. I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.